Chapter 1. My grandfather's skull was shattered in an accident. I took the perpetrator to court, only to discover that my husband, who was supposed to be on a business trip abroad, had shown up at the hospital. Do you know how important the public announcement period is for Fio as an outstanding graduate? Her future can't be ruined by a car accident. Withdraw the lawsuit immediately, or I'll cancel all your credit cards and throw your grandfather out of the VIP ward. He slammed the door viciously and turned to leave. You can only come home once you agree. Otherwise, forget about being Mrs. Chan. While I was desperately scrambling for funds to cover my grandfather's surgery, a team of lawyers approached me. The patent my grandfather had authorized to the Chan Group had expired, and I was now the new owner of the patent. After failing to pay the hospital bills, I immediately took a cab to my husband's company. Angelo, you really canceled all my credit cards for an outsider? Do you even realize my grandfather urgently needs surgery to open his skull? After everything he's done to help you, is this how you repay him? Thinking of how heartless he had been at the hospital, my eyes burned red with anger. Angelo looked at my furious face like he was watching a crazy woman throw a tantrum. Amelia, look at yourself right now. What's the point of making a scene after everything has already happened? His cold words made it seem like my grandfather wasn't awaiting a life-threatening surgery, but merely suffering from a common cold. Staring at this man I had been married to for over a decade, my heart sank to the bottom. Have you forgotten how the Chan Group even got to where it is today? Have you forgotten that when you were kidnapped, it was my grandfather who took a stab wound for you, which still leaves him with after effects to this day? And now, you're willing to sacrifice his chance to live for an intern? Angelo, are you even human? After Angelo and I started dating, my grandfather had exhausted all his connections to fully support Angelo's startup, fearing he might take a wrong turn. Even the patent that brought billions in profit to the Chan Group every year was practically given to him for just a symbolic few $100s. It's no exaggeration to say that every brick and tile of the Chan Group was thanks to my grandfather. Yet today, his generosity had been repaid with such betrayal. Hearing my words, Angelo's originally indifferent face suddenly twisted with anger. He smashed his wine glass at my feet, and shards of glass cut a bloody line across my instep. Are you done dragging out these old grievances? Right now, all you have to do is withdraw the lawsuit and tell everyone your grandfather fell down the stairs himself, and this matter will be over. If you keep pestering about Fio and delay the surgery, then the one who ends up killing your grandfather will be you. Looking at this man I had been married to for 10 years, I suddenly felt like he was a complete stranger. When we first dated, he used to cross the whole city just to pick me up from work. He would stay by my bedside all night when I was sick. He worked tirelessly, fearing he wasn't good enough for my scholarly family, and even respected my wish to not have children. But now, it felt like I was seeing the real him for the first time. Seeing me silent, he curled his lips coldly. Amelia, there's no need to hurt Fio out of jealousy. Your methods are pathetic. You've been Mrs. Chan for over 10 years. You should be satisfied. Satisfied. I no longer argued with him and simply turned to leave. The most urgent thing now was to pay for my grandfather's surgery. I left the Chan Group and arranged to meet several good friends. Normally, they would greet me with bright smiles, but today they looked at me like I was the plague. Amelia, your whole family relies on President Chan now. Going against him won't do you any good. Just let the car accident thing go. Besides, you don't even have any evidence. Stop being so willful. Apologize to President Chan and move on. President Chan has the power to cover the sky with one hand. Even if we wanted to help, we couldn't. Though the sun was blazing overhead, I felt cold all over, bitterness and rage hitting me wave after wave. As I stood there dazed, my phone rang. I'll give you 1 day to withdraw the lawsuit, or don't blame me for forgetting our marriage. Fio is waiting to go abroad for an academic conference. Brother Angelo. A soft female voice came from the other end. Fiona. If it can calm Sister Amelia's anger, I don't mind being wronged. It's just that I'll have let down all the years you spent mentoring me. Hearing this, Angelo's tone grew even colder. Amelia, do you really have to make this so ugly that nobody can save face? Do you think your grandfather would want you to sabotage an academic talent like this? Even if you refuse now, I have plenty of other ways. The call was abruptly cut off. I clenched my fists tightly, feeling utterly powerless thinking about my grandfather lying in the ICU. So this was how easily promises and vows were destroyed by time. Just then, my phone rang again. The team of my grandfather's lawyers had found me. Ms. Yi, your grandfather's patent authorization to the Chan Group has expired 3 months ago. He entrusted lawyers to transfer full ownership of the patent to you. Chapter 2. As the Chan Group grew stronger in the industry, Angelo had long forgotten that it was my grandfather's exclusive pharmaceutical patent that allowed him to fight his way through the major corporations. The Angelo who once obediently followed my grandfather around doing experiments, who would bring me sweets, had completely vanished. All that was left was the president of the mighty Chan Group, looking at my grandfather lying in the ICU, covered in tubes. I hated Angelo to the bone. How could he so shamelessly protect the person who had injured his mentor? I wouldn't let Fiona get away with it. They would have to pay. The legal team informed me that my grandfather had prepared the patent transfer documents for me even before my marriage. It was my personal premarital property, just in case. So even though I had married Angelo, he could never touch a single bit of my grandfather's patents. It was already 3 o'clock in the afternoon when I returned to the villa. I originally just wanted to grab some documents, but when I walked into the living room, I saw Fiona sitting on the sofa with Angelo. In her hands, she held the fortune doll my grandfather had specially prayed for on my behalf. I immediately exploded. Who gave you permission to touch my things? Put it down and get out of my house. Fiona was startled and instantly hid behind Angelo, her eyes brimming with tears. Amelia, word has already spread at school that you're accusing me over the accident. I really can't stay anymore. She spoke while backing toward the door. I shouldn't have disturbed your time together, brother Angelo. I'll just go back to school. Angelo grabbed her arm and forced her back into her seat. They sat even closer together than before I entered. Amelia, I've already given you enough chances to save face. You're going to withdraw the lawsuit today. Otherwise, the Chan family won't tolerate a woman as unreasonable as you. Seeing him distort the truth so shamelessly, I felt utterly sick. Not wanting to waste another word on him, I went straight upstairs and packed away the important evidence. Angelo, remember this, I'm the one who doesn't want you anymore. Hearing that, he let go of Fiona and grabbed my wrist violently. What do you mean by that? I gave a mocking smile. Amelia, don't use second-hand goods. Say that again. His eyes turned bloodshot, and his voice was frighteningly cold. Startled, Fiona dropped the fortune doll, which shattered into 2 pieces on the floor. My eyes instantly reddened with rage. You did that on purpose, didn't you? Fiona, teary-eyed, quickly waved her hands. Brother Angelo, I was just scared by Sister Amelia. I can apologize. But Angelo immediately shielded her behind him. A worthless ceramic doesn't need an apology. He knew full well that my grandfather had eaten vegetarian meals at the temple for a whole month just to pray for that fortune doll. Yet he dismissed it like it was nothing. I stood up and took several deep breaths. My leaving will free up the space for you too, right? Soon enough, I'll vacate the title of Mrs. Chan too. Whoever wants it can have it. Angelo heard the sarcasm in my voice and, in his fury, slapped me hard across the face, knocking me to the ground. What nonsense are you spouting? Fio is just a student I sponsored. I've always treated her like a sister. You're trying to ruin our reputations. Covering my face, all the anger that had been simmering inside me evaporated into nothingness, leaving only an icy emptiness. After so many years, the first time he hit me, it was for Fiona. Angelo took big strides toward the door, heartlessly throwing my luggage out. Amelia, don't think you can manipulate me like this. I don't care where you go. You have half a day left to withdraw the lawsuit. Staring at the door slammed shut before me, I silently picked up my suitcase and took a cab to the law firm to retrieve the patent transfer documents with my ID. Holding the thick stack of patent transfer papers, my eyes grew wet. These were the achievements my grandfather had exchanged with half a lifetime of effort. At that moment, the lawyer who had received me suddenly handed me a contract. Miss Yi, TN Group is willing to offer $1 billion for a 5-year exclusive license to the patents. Would you be interested in negotiating? Chapter 3. That very night, I successfully signed the contract with the other party alongside the legal team my grandfather had left for me. After the advance payment arrived, I immediately arranged for my grandfather to be transferred to the best hospital in the city and scheduled his surgery. The next day, I received an invitation from TN Group to attend their investment conference. What I didn't expect was to run into Angelo and Fiona there. Amelia, what are you doing here? Fiona's gaze flickered between me and the TN Group president. Even if Brother Angelo spoke to you harshly yesterday, you didn't have to publicly slap him with a cheating scandal, did you? She sneered, even going so far as to cling to a loser who was once crushed by the Chan Group. How embarrassing. TN Group was a rising star in the pharmaceutical industry in recent years. It was also Chan Group's biggest competitor. All along, because of my grandfather's patented resources, TN Group had always been suppressed by Chan Group. I coldly watched her babble on. Thinking she had struck a nerve, she became even more brazen. Amelia, Brother Angelo said that as long as you apologize to me and withdraw the lawsuit, he would let the matter go. With you making a scene like this, how are you even worthy of being Mrs. Chan? Before I could react, Angelo also stood before me, full of contempt. Amelia, have you had enough? Dirty laundry shouldn't be aired in public. Do I really need to teach you this basic principle? You're in your 30s, yet you're not even as mature as a soon-to-be graduate. You should seriously reflect on yourself. The TN Group president looked puzzled and was about to speak up for me, but I shook my head at him. What I do has nothing to do with you, I said to Angelo. Angelo clicked his tongue impatiently and sneered. You're the president's wife of the Chan Group. How can it have nothing to do with me? You're just throwing a tantrum. The one-day deadline I gave you is up. If you don't withdraw the lawsuit, I'll cut off all your grandfather's medical resources. I looked at him with a serene smile. Go ahead. Angelo froze slightly, his brows tightly furrowed. Just yesterday, you were willing to die for your grandfather, and today, after cozying up to another man, you're throwing him away? So it wasn't filial piety after all, you were just jealous and trying to oppose me. And do you really think TN Group can beat the Chan Group? Don't forget, the Chan Group holds your grandfather's most valuable medical patents. He leaned closer and lowered his voice. As long as you behave, you can remain Mrs. Chan, and your grandfather will be fine. But I no longer cared about the title of Mrs. Chan. With red-rimmed eyes, I raised my hand, wanting to slap his shameless face. Fiona suddenly squeezed between us, splashing the red wine she was holding onto me. Amelia, you even want to start a fight in public. You're such a disgrace to Brother Angelo. I was doused in wine, rendered speechless, soaked from head to toe. Angelo merely stood there watching, even taking out a tissue to wipe the wine splattered on Fiona's hand. I'll immediately cut off your grandfather's medical resources. Remember, I gave you a chance. It's you who doomed your grandfather. I ignored him and headed to the changing room to put on a spare set of clothes. After briefly greeting the TN president, I left the venue. As I waited for the car, I could hear people congratulating Angelo inside, as if they were certain he would win the bid once again. Just like every year, I stood by the roadside, waiting for my ride. The TN Group president couldn't help but ask, Miss Yi, will President Chan affect our cooperation? He was worried that I might still lean toward Angelo. I shook my head. Once I made a decision, there was no turning back. Opening the car door, I couldn't help but glance back at the venue one last time. Angelo was on the phone, staring at me from a distance. The next second, he suddenly sprinted toward me. He wedged his hand between the door just as it was about to close, still clutching his phone. From the phone came the voice of his secretary. President Chan, you heard correctly. Professor Gu, Madam's grandfather, has already been transferred to another hospital. Also, the patents authorized to our group have expired and been reclaimed. We no longer qualify to participate in the bidding conference. The secretary's words exploded like a thunderclap. Angelo's face turned instantly ashen, and he shoved the phone into my face. Amelia, explain this to me. Chapter 4. Fiona, trembling, hurried over and grabbed the phone, quickly scrolling through the documents the secretary had sent. Amelia, how can you just take back something you've given away? Is this what your family's upbringing teaches you? Angelo's eyes were red with rage. As long as you re-sign the contract with me, I'll forgive everything that happened before. He shoved a newly drawn-up electronic contract into my hands. I glanced at it. The price he offered was still just a few hundred. How ridiculous. Sorry, but I've already sold the patents. The surroundings instantly fell silent. Angelo shot a sharp glance at the TN Group president standing nearby, his face dark and vicious. Amelia, you sold it to him? Are you crazy? Cancel the deal right now. He glared at me with the fury of wanting to devour me alive. But I only looked at him coldly, without a ripple of emotion. Why would I give up a 10 billion offer to choose you? 10 billion? Fiona cried out in shock. He didn't just buy the patents. Did he? Sister Amelia? Did you also do something indecent? Her gaze scanned me up and down, her implication obvious. Hearing such filthy insinuations, the TN Group president could no longer tolerate it. He immediately called for security. President Chan, please have your people watch their mouths. If you continue slandering Miss Yi or me, I'll initiate legal proceedings. Besides, Professor Gu's patents have already expired with your company. Once a contract is signed, anyone is free to engage in legitimate commercial activities. As he finished, over a dozen security guards surrounded them. Angelo glared coldly at me, his expression twisted. Amelia, you'll regret this. Fiona tried to say something else but was silenced by the TN president's sharp gaze and hurried to follow Angelo out. I turned to the TN president and gave him a gentle smile. Thank you for your help. He laughed heartily. Miss Yi, I hope our cooperation will go smoothly from here on. I shook his hand, officially sealing our partnership. At the end of the investment conference, TN Group, backed by my grandfather's resources, successfully won the bid, thus breaking Chan Group's long-standing monopoly over medical investment resources. Just then, I received a call from the hospital. Miss Yi, your grandfather is awake. I immediately declined the TN president's dinner invitation and rushed to the hospital. Chapter 5. After leaving the venue, Angelo clenched his fists tightly. It was just a girl he had sponsored who accidentally injured someone. He could have smoothed it over with money, like he had so many times before. But this time, it was Amelia's grandfather. He had assumed that as husband and wife, she would naturally support his decisions without question. He never expected that she would call the police. He didn't want to hurt Amelia, but he also couldn't tolerate her stubbornness and defiance, so he thought he would use this incident to teach her a lesson. If she wanted to be Mrs. Chan, she needed to be obedient. Who could have foreseen that she would turn around and use the patent authorization, the very foundation of the Chan Group, to threaten him? Brother Angelo, don't be angry with Sister Amelia, Fiona said, hooking her little finger around his to comfort him. It was her favorite move, full of girlish coyness. Normally, Angelo would indulge her, but today, for some reason, he felt only irritation. The look in Amelia's eyes, like she was staring at an enemy, made his chest tighten. It was clearly her who insisted on dragging out an issue that could have been easily resolved. Angelo sighed, forcing down the frustration in his heart. Brother Angelo, are we going home now? Fiona asked sweetly. Angelo paused for a moment before finally relenting. Let's go to the hospital. A flash of unwillingness crossed Fiona's eyes, but she said nothing in the end. Angelo still held onto a sliver of hope, believing that the so-called 10 billion deal was just a performance Amelia and the TN president had staged together, that her grandfather would still need his help, and once he stepped in to save him, Amelia would gratefully admit she was wrong and come running back. But when he actually arrived at the hospital, he found that the surgery had already been completed and a professional caregiver was arranged. Amelia had been telling the truth. Angelo, you've come to see me? Grandfather's gaze suddenly shifted to Fiona, and his pupils trembled. He recognized her, the girl who had hit him with her car, and now she stood intimately beside his grandson-in-law. Fiona opened her mouth with disdain. Professor Gu, do you know what your granddaughter has done? All these services you're enjoying, she exchanged her body for them. She's completely disgraced the Chan Group. Fiona would say things like this from time to time, and Angelo usually brushed it off as petty jealousy, but hearing it now left a bad taste in his mouth. Grandfather was so shocked he almost fell out of bed, the monitor next to him showing a rapid increase in his heart rate. You're spouting nonsense. He pointed at Fiona, then turned to Angelo. She sent me to the hospital. Why isn't she in jail? Facing his grandfather's question, Angelo couldn't answer. Before he could even react to stop Fiona, a loud slap echoed through the room. Fiona was knocked to the floor by me, who had rushed over. My grandfather just finished surgery, and you're here trying to provoke him. What's your intention? Instead of barking here, you should think about what you'll say in court tomorrow. The judge won't be swayed by your cheap theatrics. I grabbed her hair, ready to slap her again, but Angelo quickly seized my wrist. I told you not to blow this up, and you still dared to sue her. He glanced at grandfather and lowered his voice to threaten me coldly. Now that grandfather is awake, just let this matter go. Let me tell you, I've already destroyed all the evidence. If you insist on going to court, you'll only humiliate yourself. I shook off his hand and sneered. How the case is judged is up to the court. And besides, you're not welcome here. After I'm done suing Fiona, I'll sue you next. Angelo, I'm divorcing you. I had thought saying the word divorce would take an enormous amount of courage, but now, it came out of my mouth effortlessly. After this farcical betrayal, there was nothing left worth clinging to from our decade-long relationship. Chapter 6. Angelo was a little stunned. He probably never imagined that I would actually say something like that. After all, after more than a decade of marriage, he knew how much I had loved him. He stared at me, his face dark with anger. Amelia, what kind of joke are you playing now? I just showed a little favoritism toward Fio. Is it really worth all this? Or is it because you've latched onto another man and suddenly feel bold? Do you really think the president of TN Group would genuinely treat you well? He still thought I was simply jealous, or that this was just another round of push and pull between us. But this broken relationship, I truly no longer wanted it. My grandfather raised me for 30 years, and I've known you for less than 15. What makes you think I would gamble my grandfather's life for the sake of some childish drama with you? Angelo was rendered speechless, his face twisted with rage. The atmosphere in the hospital room turned suffocatingly heavy. No matter what I said, they wouldn't listen. I didn't want to waste another word arguing, and I didn't want to disturb my grandfather's rest. So I called hospital security. The guards arrived quickly, and under their urging, Angelo, with Fiona in his arms, left in big strides. You have no evidence. Let's see how you convict Fio in court. I'll be waiting for you to come begging. Fiona shot me a provocative look before leaving. As soon as they were gone, the room instantly fell silent. My grandfather coughed a few times, pulling me back to reality. Seeing his head wrapped in bandages and the various medical devices attached to him for monitoring, my eyes reddened. I had lost my parents at a young age, growing up shy and withdrawn, unable to connect with others. It was my grandfather who gave me all his love and care, raising me with dedication, shaping the person I became today. But the once strong and vibrant man now lay there, fragile and faint like a candle in the wind. I gripped my grandfather's hand tightly, tears brimming in my eyes. Grandfather had already guessed everything, but he said nothing, simply patting my back in silent support. He had always backed my decisions. Tears streamed down my face uncontrollably. I must seek justice for my grandfather. The next morning, I gathered all the evidence and headed to court early. When I sat down, Angelo looked at me with a complicated expression. Fiona had even brought along her classmates and professors from school to clear her name. Looking at the thick stack of evidence in front of me, she mocked. Amelia, where did you fabricate all this evidence? Let me tell you, fantasies don't hold up in court. The judge won't pity you just because you cry. I sneered coldly. Of course, the court only cares about evidence. My confidence made Fiona visibly uneasy, but she still believed in Angelo's power. After all, he had never failed her before. This time wouldn't be any different, or so she thought. She puffed up her chest, looking smug, with brother Angelo protecting me. You're definitely going to lose. Amelia, did you know? Yesterday brother Angelo said that once you and he divorce, he'll make me Mrs. Chan, so don't regret it when the time comes. After speaking, she turned around and sat coyly beside Angelo. Angelo, deliberately in front of me, gently patted her head, his eyes full of tenderness, but inside, I felt nothing. Court was about to begin. Because of the pressure from Chan Group, several eyewitnesses refused to testify in person, only submitting written statements. Angelo was beginning to grow impatient. Is this what you call evidence? Stop wasting my time. Just as he finished speaking, my lawyer presented the most critical piece of evidence. I turned to Angelo with a slight smile. Don't be in such a rush, here it comes. Chapter 7. Surveillance footage from the scene, is that enough? I asked calmly. Fiona's face instantly turned pale. The video clearly showed Fiona's face behind the wheel. The car sped across the crosswalk, striking my grandfather and sending him flying through the air, rolling several times on the ground. Fiona didn't even get out to check on him. She simply drove away from the scene. I closed my eyes, unable to bear watching the footage of my grandfather's suffering. My nails dug into my palms. I wished I could tear Fiona apart with my bare hands. This is impossible, Fiona screamed, jumping to her feet. This has to be fake. She's trying to frame me with AI face-swapping technology. I never drove that day. I never hit anyone. Angelo also stood up. I also questioned the authenticity of this evidence. Of course they didn't believe it. The first time I tried to retrieve the surveillance footage, I was blocked at every turn. They even handed me a fake video. No, Fiona. No car accident, only a clip of my grandfather supposedly falling down the stairs by himself. When I questioned them, they brushed me off, insisting it was the real version and telling me not to stir up trouble. In broad daylight, the Chan group had tried to cover up the truth, twisting black into white. But fortunately, without my grandfather's patent, the Chan group had lost everything: its monopoly, its reputation. With TN Group's connections, I was able to obtain the real surveillance footage, and now, I could strike them down in court with irrefutable proof. It must be fake. She's just jealous of how young and outstanding I am. That's why she's framing me with this video. I'm not that kind of person. Fiona tried to explain desperately to the crowd, but the video played before everyone's eyes, and no one spoke. Panic began to creep into her voice. Amelia, I'm going to sue you for defamation. Finally, the judge could not tolerate the chaos any longer. Order! This is a court of law, not a marketplace. He sent the footage for verification. The conclusion: the video was authentic, the original, unaltered footage from the scene. Furthermore, we had additional surveillance from multiple angles on nearby streets. TN Group had even convinced one eyewitness to testify. Trembling, he pointed to Fiona, confirming that she was indeed the driver who caused the accident. And that's not all, I said, standing and addressing the court. Fiona has repeatedly driven under the influence and caused multiple accidents. She's used the Chan Group's influence to pressure victims into signing settlements. Otherwise, she would manipulate the courtroom with lies and false narratives. If I hadn't managed to obtain the real evidence this time, I would have ended up like those before me, silenced, without a chance to speak the truth. Whispers erupted among Fiona's teachers and classmates. I had applied to have the hearing streamed online. Netizens were also voicing their outrage. I can't believe the goddess of a top university turned out to be such trash. Hit-and-run driver and homewrecker. She was even sponsored by the wife's family all through college. What a backstabber. And no one's calling out Angelo? Betraying his mentor for a side chick. Truly heartless. Shameless pair. Justice for the original wife. Don't let these scumbags off easy. Facing overwhelming evidence, Fiona finally broke down and cried hysterically. Brother Angelo, what do? I don't want to go to jail. Save me, please. She kept looking at Angelo, hoping he would save her. But Angelo himself was now struggling to stay composed. He never imagined I would go this far for my grandfather, without caring for his reputation or the future of the Chan Group. He glared at me with hatred, as if he wanted to tear me apart. But I met his gaze fearlessly. When the judge slammed the gavel down, confirming the verdict, Angelo's expression finally changed. Chapter 8. Fiona was sentenced. And with it, her hopes of being named an outstanding graduate were shattered. As she was being led away, she clutched Angelo's hand, crying and begging him to save her. But Angelo shoved her away violently, sending her sprawling to the ground. Look at what you've done with the Chan Group's name. You've completely disgraced us. Sponsoring you through college was the biggest mistake I ever made. Seeing Angelo abandon her, Fiona completely broke down. You said you'd make me Mrs. Chan. You lied to me. Angelo's face turned pale. If it weren't for you, Amelia would never have turned against me, never pushed for a divorce. You ruined my marriage, Mrs. Chan. Dream on. No way the Chan Group would ever accept a woman with a criminal record. Fiona collapsed on the ground, her clothes disheveled, her hair a tangled mess, nothing like the arrogant girl she once was. She cried and begged, trying to use her tears to win Angelo back. But Angelo just looked at her coldly, his eyes devoid of any emotion. Dragged away by the bailiffs, Fiona was terrified. In a sudden, desperate move, she knelt before me and kowtowed, her forehead slamming against the floor. Amelia, I know I was wrong. Please forgive me. I'll do anything. I'll work like a slave for you and your family. Just please don't send me to jail. I'll apologize to Professor Gu. I'll never go near Brother Angelo again. Please. I'm begging you. I looked down at her, feeling no pity. Fiona, once so proud, was now utterly humiliated, but she had never spared a thought for the family she hurt before. Fiona kept kowtowing, her forehead bleeding, but I didn't say a word. I turned and walked away. Outside the courtroom, Angelo stood blocking my path. I casually threw the divorce agreement into his arms. Sign it quickly. We'll finalize the divorce in a few days. Angelo's hands trembled. Are you serious? Aren't you just mad at me? I stared at him coldly, my silence giving him the answer. I won't agree. Angelo clenched his fists tightly. Nothing ever happened between me and Fiona. You can't force a divorce over something that never even existed. Your grandfather wouldn't want us to divorce either. He's still hoping to see our child one day. You forgot? We promised to take him to Tiananmen Square to watch the flag raising for his birthday. Hearing him mention those old promises, I actually laughed. And when you were defending Fiona, cutting off my credit cards, and halting my grandfather's medical treatment, did you think about those promises then? If it weren't for my grandfather's foresight, he might not even have lived to see today. I shoved Angelo away from me with all my strength, my eyes cold and empty. You think I didn't know how many times you met Fiona behind my back? Taking her on trips, pinning her WeChat to the top of your messages? I was just giving you chances. Angelo's face turned deathly pale. He opened his mouth, as if to speak, but in the end said nothing. I turned toward the door, pulling it open. I won't sign, he muttered. I paused, turning back to look at him, my eyes full of icy determination. Even if you refuse now, I have plenty of ways to make it happen. Without my grandfather's patents, Angelo was nothing. Chapter 9. Since the Chan Group lost the backing of my grandfather's patents, they had been losing project after project. On top of that, the scandal broke out, and the company's stock price plummeted. Even the core team could no longer tolerate Angelo's personal conduct. They collectively jumped ship to TN Group. Angelo worked tirelessly trying to stabilize the company, but he still insisted on visiting the hospital every day to see my grandfather, hoping to beg for the patent authorization back. Grandfather, calm and composed, enjoyed Angelo's care, but never once mentioned the patents. The day my grandfather was discharged, Angelo showed up again. He stood to the side, his face haggard, eyes bloodshot. Clearly, things hadn't been going well for him. Amelia, let's go home, he said. I dodged the hand he extended to carry my luggage and gave him a cold glance. When are you signing the divorce papers? Can't you really give me another chance? His voice trembled with a hint of pleading. Seeing my complete indifference, he turned to my grandfather, clutching his last hope. Grandfather, please help me talk to her. Amelia and I have been married for more than 10 years. Can you really bear to see our family fall apart? Grandfather simply chuckled and shook his head. You used my patents to lord over others, and I only found out now. Even if Amelia didn't want a divorce, I would have forced her to leave you. I won't let her continue making the same mistake. Angelo staggered back a few steps, clutching his head as if unable to accept the blow. Amelia, I promise I'll treat you well from now on. Please, don't leave me. I really can't live without you. He spoke with such sincerity, like when he had once vowed on our wedding day to love me for a lifetime. But he didn't keep that vow. I had believed him once, but I wouldn't make the same mistake again. He still tried to say something, but the police arrived and stopped him. Embezzlement, collusion with shady forces. He had to pay the price for what he had done. As he was taken away, he cried uncontrollably, as if he had lost the most important thing in his life. I left with my grandfather without looking back, not even sparing Angelo a glance. Not long after, I received a signed divorce agreement sent from the detention center. At last, I had truly ended this marriage. The new year arrived. The Chan Group, severely weakened, teetered on the edge of bankruptcy. Meanwhile, TN Group flourished under the boost of my grandfather's patents. I decided to take this opportunity to return to school for further study, while my grandfather stayed home to rest and occasionally research new patents. At his suggestion, I founded my own company. Holding the power in my own hands, that is a woman's true strength. I sold the marital home I once shared with Angelo. Every item inside was cleared out. Everything from the past had been left behind. I believed that ahead of me, and for my grandfather, only good days awaited.